In Corporita Bonanza, with Hanan Awaad, we will talk about several topics, and we will meet successful people and experts in many fields to learn about their success stories and learn from them how to empower ourselves and stimulate our creativity. We will also review important books that enriched our lives. This program is for you, whether you are an employee or searching for your next big opportunity, or managing a business, or a student, or a parent. I'm Hanan Awaad. The world is my canvas, and success is my paint. Connect with me and my guests at president@corporita.ca. In Corporita Bonanza, we will learn from each other, and we will grow together. Hello everyone, this is Hanan Awaad, Editor-in-Chief of Corporita Magazine and your host for today's episode of Corporita Bonanza, where we meet successful people and dig for gold nuggets. My guest today is Ralph Benmergui. Ralph has a long career in communication and I believe we will discuss so many things together. I met Ralph in a workshop on business planning for creative business. And oh my God, I cannot tell you the wealth of information that I learned that day. So Ralph, thank you so much for being here with me at Corporita Bonanza. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you. I was thinking where to start, and I thought the logical start is with your education. You have a degree in journalism, so why journalism?
Actually, I don't have a degree in journalism. I don't have a degree in anything actually, because with journalism, what happened was I was in a 3-year applied arts bachelor's from Ryerson in journalism. They were one of the best schools in the country.
Yes.
And my teacher was a man who's just recently passed away, a Canadian icon, Stuart McLean.
Yeah.
And Stuart said to me, you know, I don't think you really need, I was a mature student. I'd come back to school at 27.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I don't think you need to be here. You should just go get a job. And there's one in Winnipeg if you'd like to apply for it for the CBC. And I only really wanted to work for the public broadcaster. So yeah. I did that and I got the job. So I never got to finish my 3rd year, which I was looking forward to because I was going to be the editor of the Ryersonian newspaper. And I thought, wow. And so I never did print, but I went into broadcast. And once I started, you know, there wasn't much point in going back to finish because in those days, credentials weren't what they are now. They've gone from being unnecessary in a lot of different jobs, it was experience people wanted, to becoming inflated so that people with masters and PhDs have to compete for jobs that used to go to people with bachelors. So it's been kind of a funny world that way.
Yeah, and I think the same trend is happening again. We can see so many jobs that says degree or equivalent experience.
Right.
And many jobs, they test your skills, they give you assignments and, you know, long interview process or something.
Well, there's I think it was one of the large consulting firms, the global consulting firms, their UK branch, decided instead of asking people for their academic credentials to administer a test.
Yes.
And anyone could apply for the test.
Yes.
You could have absolutely no so-called qualifications, or you could have too many. It didn't matter. But if you are the person who came through the test as just the right person for this kind of a job, then you had a much better chance of getting that job than somebody who on paper looked good, because we'd gotten to the point where you looked at a resume and the only thing that you could tell the difference about was the degree qualification.
Yeah.
But what they realized is degrees are just one measure of a person. They're important in some ways, but in other ways, you're missing a lot of gems out there, a lot of really interesting people who can.
And I think universities and educational institutes started to take this into consideration. So we can see lots of changes in the academic life, and how they teach students practical skills through projects, through alliances with industries. So I can see it now. I can see it now.
So it's, the other thing that's different, I just spent, up until last year, I spent 5 years at Sheridan College, which is really a polytechnic. It's really a polytechnic university more than a college at this point.
Yeah.
But 1 in 5 students, and it was coming down to 1 in 4 students who entered Sheridan already had a BA.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were coming there they had decided there was a specific field they wanted to gain some expertise in. So they were seeing it as a finishing school.
Mm-hmm.
But any good academic institution now mixes soft skills and hard skills.
Mm-hmm.
In the university sector, they call it experiential learning.
Mm-hmm.
In colleges, they call it applied learning. Mm-hmm. But applied has a negative connotation. If you take an applied course in high school, what you're really saying is, I'm not academic.
Yeah. Or I'm not smart enough to.
Right. And as it is, the college system and the university system have what I believe is a highly unacknowledged classist system in place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the best go to university, the rest go to college is the way it was originally done. And it really discourages a lot of cross-pollination that should be happening at this point. But more and more institutions are doing something to make real contributions to each other without saying, oh, no, you're just a college. And,
Yeah. And let's go back to your first job with CBC. So according to your professor, you had the skills and you the ability to apply it. And was it your first encounter with the communication world?
Well, you know, I started when I was a young person, you know, in my late teens and early 20s. I was an actor. I was a stand-up comedian. I was a singer in a rock band. I was just having fun.
Yeah.
But it was all, everything feeds everything else. Often we think of things as disqualifying you from the next thing, because why would a stand-up comedian become a current affairs journalist on network television? Like, I remember one of the exec producers saying to me, "You were a stand-up comedian, is that right?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, that wasn't serious, was it?" And I said, "Well, yes, it was. That's how I made my living, you know." Just so a friend of mine had told me the right line to say when this came up, because of course it was going to come up. And he said, having a sense of humor is having the sense to know when to use your humor, which I can't always say is true, but I liked it a lot.
Not only this, I feel that stand-up comedians are very smart and in observing the current affairs and understanding, you know, the dynamics of the world, linking politics to science to society, and mixing it all in a fun way. So,
well, to be actually funny, it has to be true.
Yeah.
If it's not true, then people feel like you're trying to concoct a story to make them laugh.
Yeah.
But you can tell something that's true because the audience doesn't have a voluntary response. It has an involuntary response. It just bursts out laughing because that's absolutely true. And it can be mundane. It can be about, you know, how your dog goes to the bathroom in a park, or it can be about the human condition. So storytelling doesn't change if you're doing political storytelling, you know, business storytelling. You have to, what's your narrative? People live on stories. They don't live on facts.
Yeah. And I remember when we were talking one time, you told me, I'm a storyteller.
Right.
And now when we talk about branding and marketing and business, experts are always saying, what's your story? Share your story. And there are so many organizations that actually built around sharing stories of others. So how to be a good storyteller.
Well, here's something I wouldn't mind interjecting into that, and that is you can be very insincere and disingenuous in the craft of communicating a business or a brand. You can say, you know what, we're going to present ourselves as this kind of a person with these kinds of values. And in reality, it's nonsense. You're not, your business model actually has nothing to do with that. So that really came to light. Sort of the curtain got pulled back on the whole Tim Hortons debacle that just happened with minimum wage. Tim Hortons has spent years identifying itself as the epitome of Canadian values, suburban Canadian values for the most part, but Canadian values, whatever that means. So they were Canada's coffee shop. As a matter of fact, last July 4th, they did a poutine special in the States, not here, but in the States. And I was doing some work with CBC Radio at the time, and one of the producers said, well, we should do a story on that. And I said, well, why would we give them a free commercial? And they said, well, but they're Canada's coffee shop. And the woman said this with a straight face. And I said, my God, this is the public broadcaster. This is not our job to promote the brand. There's no such thing as what they're selling you, that they're just, there for you in every moment of your great Canadian life. In reality, their business model is a franchise model that exploits labor at a very high price to the person who works there. It's precarious employment, and they really showed their colors in terms of, you can't raise the price of a donut 10 cents. Who owns Tim Hortons? A multinational company that's in America that makes Burger King. So in reality, what happens sometimes is what should be honest and good storytelling is really a kind of dark ops operation, where you really say, we want people to think this of us. But in reality, you're not behaving that way at all. So storytelling can become quite perverted. It's not always for the good. The key is to find people who are honest and have integrity and have them tell their stories.
But do you think that nowadays customers are knowledgeable, they educate themselves, so it's somehow difficult to trick them with unauthentic story?
No, I don't. I think that people think they are smarter than advertisers, but they don't realize that they've internalized the messaging. That there's something about looking at a product and think, but that's Tide. Tide's like the real deal, right? Makes clothes whiter. You internalize the messages. You'd like to think you're above it. But if you actually wrote a journal today of all the commercial messages that came your way, you'd be shocked at the end of the day how much you have absorbed. Shocked. So in reality, what we have created is an unsustainable consumption model. So you have, I'll give you an example, fast food. It is almost categorically awful for you. A double bacon cheeseburger, fries with gravy, and a pop. Right? If you fed your kid this every day, you'd think, what kind of a parent am I?
Yes.
And the company will tell you, it's not supposed to be eaten every day. It's something you do as a treat. That's not true. It's sugar, salt, and fat, which the body craves as an animal, and that you want to hoard instinctively. It's called mouthfeel by chemical food people. Mouthfeel, that bite.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So these are all underlying this kind of desire to create a contented cow kind of culture where we don't really activate. We don't stand up for things. A liter of water costs more than a liter of gas. And the plastic left behind is absolutely poisoning our home, our planet. So to me, like right now, I'm doing work at the Green Party of Ontario in their
I know that.
And I've worked with the Greens before, and for me, at a certain point, like, are we going to get up and say something about what our children are going to inherit from us? Or are we going to go, I think I'd rather have the Wendy's burger than the Burger King burger, because apparently they don't flash freeze their meat. What are we talking about?
They are, yeah, they are, in the same category.
Yes, and
As bad as each other, yeah.
And corporate malfeasance, Volkswagen can absolutely lie to people to tell them they're driving a green car. People buy their car, and then they go, "Oh, sorry, no, that wasn't it. Here's some stuff."
Yeah.
Loblaws and the supermarket chains can fix the price of bread by Loblaws' own admission, and then offer you a gift coupon. I mean, and yet we turn on public institutions like governments and go, they're horribly run and they're wasting taxpayers' dollars. Meanwhile, the corporate sector in 2008 devastated the lives of hundreds of millions of people around the world. They have no pensions. They've lost everything. Not one person went to jail. So I think that when it comes to business, there's an ethical business model, a flourishing canvas business model that people really have to start deciding. Like, if you're going to tell me that I can't afford to pay you $14 an hour, then you're telling me my business model is predicated on you starving, you being a working poor person who has to make a decision if their kid gets medicine or if they get a meal. So we've got to decide for ourselves what is to make business not a dirty word, but a clean word, a good word.
So I see that I see that we are talking about a complex dilemma here. So we have government, we have the businesses, and what we inherited from years and years of doing businesses and manipulating the public and creating unreal or unauthentic authentic story or image when all the branding efforts that we are doing. And at the same time, we have consumers. And you shocked me when I asked you, yeah, but we educate ourselves. We read all these reports. We go and try to find organic food, fair trade. I love my coffee so much, so I'm searching for fair trade coffee and all these things. And now you're telling me, no, there are so many other things in the equation. And what's the solution? Where to start? This ethical business model that you are talking about, how we can enforce it when we have these big names who manipulate the market and every industry on earth.
Right. So I think that it's good. You see, I think if you're trying to improve your ethical consuming habits, that's great. But it's not a question of changing the player, you. It's a question of changing the playing field. So if the people in California, their government says, you know what, don't really care what the car companies are telling us. We have 33 million people in this state. Every car sold in this state as of 2023 has to be an electric vehicle. You're not allowed to sell internal combustion engine cars or diesel cars in this market. And if you don't like it, you can sell your car somewhere else. Well, guess who's going to be making a lot of electric vehicles? So they're changing the playing field. In Germany, they say, if you create a product, you have to take it from cradle to grave to cradle. You have to make a circular economy.
Yes, circular economy.
So BMWs now have 95% of their parts that are recyclable. 95% of their parts. And guess who makes more money at the end of the cycle? BMW, which is great. They make a responsible product. Now this,
I see your approach.
One more thing.
Yeah.
This, you can't open the back of this to take the battery out, this iPhone.
Yeah.
Because it has a certain screw in it and a proprietary screwdriver that only Apple owns.
Yeah.
So they won't even let you fix this. The battery's to die in 18 months. So if we keep putting up with those kinds of things, we get what we deserve. But there's one more thing. There's a bigger piece to this.
Mm-hmm.
And that is perpetual growth is not sustainable. We are at 8 billion people. It is not sustainable to continue to consume. And in the higher industrial nations, we consume at an enormous rate.
Yes.
The largest industry in North America is storage.
Yeah.
Junk. Things you don't have any room for in the house. People saying, I need a bigger house.
Yes.
We have lost perspective, and we have abdicated a more spiritual relationship with each other for a private consumer relationship with ourselves.
Yeah, to fill the void that, you know, we had for some long time, and even younger generation, I think they are born with a void in their heart.
Right. Everyone is. In the United Kingdom, they've just gotten a minister of loneliness because they realized by doing research that people were extremely lonely. How could you not be lonely when there's nothing compelling you to share with people, nothing compelling you to share space or resources or time?
United Emirates, they have a minister of happiness.
Right. So there's an identification.
Yeah.
Right. What used to come to us through spiritual life, nobody needs that. And, you know, look, I'll just buy stuff. And, you know, Jerry Seinfeld talked about this when he was receiving an award at an advertising thing. He ridiculed everyone in the room. And one part of it was saying, you know, when I go and I buy something, I feel great for about 4.5 minutes until I get it home. Exactly. And then I got to start all over again. Exactly. So we're not doing ourselves a favor, even if we're trying to be ethical about our consumption, if our consumption isn't challenged. And yet, if you tell a human being, the animal, the lizard part of a human being's brain, I'm going to give you less. When I think I'm going to stop eating bread tomorrow, I'll go out and have a sandwich. Right? I'll eat a bucket of ice cream if I think I'm supposed to lose weight. There's just this crazy thing of we are really animal, and what advertising does is it plays on that. And what branding does is it presents a pleasant face to which is often an unpleasant activity.
Yeah. And business gurus, they always talk about create scarcity. And I was thinking of this, but nothing is rare, actually. Nothing is not available. In fact, it's the opposite. Think of anything, any service, any product, and you will find plenty of it.
Well, if you can find 7 different kinds of colas, right, in a supermarket, 7 different kinds of cola, then, and half of it on the shelf is plastic, and the plastics industry will tell you, oh, you know, but it's recyclable, right? But if you look at how much of it gets recycled, it's a very small amount.
Yeah,
I mean, we really have to demand more.
Yeah.
If we don't demand more, we're not going to get more. And I don't mean more stuff.
Yeah. So, you know, my mind keeps thinking of solutions. You know, it's easy to talk about the problem and highlight all these elements, but let's go back to the approach that you talked about. I feel it's top down. So starting with the government imposing certain interventions, which will create some sort of a ripple effect. So the consumers will demand this, so the businesses will start responding. But at the same time, you listen to other people and they say, no, top-down approaches don't work. Something has to come from, you know, the grassroots. Something has to come down up.
Well, it's 2 things, right? There's a if governments think they're going to lose their ability to govern, to win power, they will behave in a different way than they're behaving. But I worked in government, and I'll tell you that the voices that are heard are the organized voices, people who have enough money to go in and make the case for their business or business group or environmental group or any other group to be heard. So when you work with a cabinet minister, you see a parade of lobbyists and professionals who come in after having worked on the civil service side to create an argument for their case and then come in to see the minister. They know how to do this. They're very good at it. Many of them came from government or from the civil service. So they're speaking to their own kind.
Yeah.
And that's somebody, I was at the Green Party of Ontario convention on the weekend, and one of the women who's going to run as a candidate sat with me at breakfast there and she explained why she wanted to run, and she said, "I'm tired of living with corporate bondage." And I thought, isn't that an interesting way to put it? But I really liked it because it was, what she was trying to say is, if we as people don't stand up for things and leave this conversation to, oh, I don't care about politics, they're just over there, then we get what we deserve, which is we don't care, so they get to do what they need to do. So if you're the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, you get to mount a campaign against minimum wage. You're just fighting for your peace. So we have to find ways to have people decide that things are worth fighting for. And if you are living as something that just consumes and consumes and then literally dies, and that's your life, then you're not in that game. So it's not just governments have to do things. Governments have to know that people want that. You know.
But what if people don't realize that they want that or they need that?
Well, because they're getting just enough, right? Like the fridge is still full. My kids have clothes. They're going to school. Revolutions happen when the middle class gets thrown out the door, not when the lower classes get thrown out the door. The lower class has been thrown out the door already.
Yes. Yes.
No government, federal government, has lost an election in this country for its reprehensible behavior to Indigenous people. None. Nobody loses. They go, you know, we're really going to try this time. You have Indigenous men live 15 years less than I do.
Yeah.
So what is that?
Yeah.
So, but the problem is, you're just trying to get by yourself, is the way you see it. But once the middle class, and this is what's happening around the world, is the middle class deal has been broken. If you just show up and perform and behave, you will get a pension, you will get by, it'll be okay, you'll be taken care of. Now that deal is broken. People at 50, the highest use of heroin in the United States is white males over 50 in the Rust Belt. That means they lost hope and they can't get a new job and they're not trained to do anything. So once you, the middle, and unions in this private sector have been decimated, and unions are one of the major building blocks of the middle class, that working people could afford to send their kids to schools and buy a car and get a home and contribute. Now, what's a job, right? Who's an entrepreneur? Everybody's an entrepreneur because everyone's precarious, but most people are not cut out to be entrepreneurs.
Yes. Yes. And this is something I was thinking of, you know, sometimes we have a new buzzword, so we have to stigmatize other words so the new word stands out. So and I think this happened to the concept of entrepreneurship. So this concept to be to get romanticized and popularized, we have to stigmatize other words like an employee or working paycheck to paycheck or something, without actually thinking of there are different career models. and not everyone is comfortable or has the skills to work in this particular career model that you are popularizing. So why now everyone is entrepreneur? Why we've been for a few years now, talking about startups and the new wave of knowledge economy, adding to this discussion the consumerism now we've been talking. So what's the ideal economy look like?
This is the challenge. Why aren't we working on Plan B? We are clinging to a model that doesn't serve us in the way it did when two things were in play. One was, it is not coincidental that the 20th century was the century of incredibly cheap energy. But we could use as much of it as we wanted with very little consequence. That's over in terms of this fossil fuel energy. It's also choking us to death.
Yes.
And changing our climate. So instead of dealing with that, we still are allowing a conversation that says, really, this is a 50-50 conversation. Maybe there's climate change, maybe there isn't. I know that 97.5% of scientists already agree that indeed human generated climate change is real and devastating in its effects. But you know what? Let's continue to have political parties that support today's economy. So the problem is, how do you move from the need and necessity to have an economy of today to a future where 70% of the jobs that are going to be created have not been created yet, where our children don't even know what the job is yet,
yes,
where automation has changed the nature of routinized work, where resources are no longer as easy to attain, and the consumption of product is not sustainable. So what we need to do is we need to start coming together as people to stop looking for how to get in on this particular train, how to build the railing to get to the next particular train. And some of it is already emerging. Some of it is about models where people exchange talents and energies together. Yes. Well, you know what? I know. Right. So I know how to do this, you know how to do that. Great. Well, you can do this for me and I'll do this for you. And there's lots of those kinds of exchanges going on between people. The problem is that many of what was so-called sharing economies really have just become yet another concentration of capital and wealth into a few hands. Uber, Airbnb. These are not, the models we're using right now are only existing because of the timing of precarity, that we are in such a precarious situation that we've romanticized startups. Most people in startups are never going to get anywhere as that startup.
And I have seen so many examples when someone starts something, they create an application or a software or something, and a big mogul company, they buy them for several millions, and that's it.
Yep.
So
half the time they're buying it to not have competition.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, car companies did this all the time. They bought patents to electric engines and just left them on a shelf because they didn't want their business threatened. But there's another piece of this, which is, well, what choice do I have? Nobody's hiring people full-time with pensions and health group health plans and EHT to pay. And, people just want you when they need you. You're now disposable.
Yes.
So in response to that, a lot of academic institutions have gotten on the train of entrepreneurship training. Everyone's supposed to be an entrepreneur. Very few people are entrepreneurs, very few. It takes enormous resilience, a certain kind of personality, an untrainability, a desire to lead. These are all things that don't embed themselves in every person. What happens to everybody else? I mean, Roger Martin, who was the head of the Rotten School of Business at one point, gave a talk and he said, I'll bust a myth for you. Small business is not the engine of the economy.
how we have the statistics that 70% of the economy circulates through small businesses and
Right. So that's great. How long do they last?
oh yeah,
Right.
they failed.
So it's a churn.
Yeah.
It doesn't grow. It doesn't scale up.
Mm.
It just, somebody opens a hairstyling salon. Somebody opens a juice, a place to buy
Yeah.
good juice.
Yeah.
And somebody gets an electronics store, and then they're done.
Mm.
Just walk around in January and February after Christmas. If they haven't made their sales, most of which happen in Christmas orgy of buying, they're dead,
Mm.
right? Others last, and that's great, but they are not growing and scaling and growing and scaling. They're just trying and failing.
Mm.
And
That's why we have the term serial entrepreneur.
right, right. So we romanticize these things, and we shouldn't. It's only for, it's not for the faint-hearted to be that. But I do believe that there's ways to find perhaps people. Maybe we can call them sharepreneurs, where they actually find ways to work cooperatively with other people and come together in a commons. Because what we've lost is the common good. But we use language. This is a classic communications piece that the corporate world infected the governing world with. Turning people from citizens to taxpayers. Every politician and anyone who I do political consulting with, I say, I'd love to work with you. If you're going to say taxpayer every third sentence, I can't work with you. Well, why not? And I explain, taxpayers are customers. And they want services. And by the way, they don't want to pay much for them, but they want the best service, even though they don't want to pay much for them. So they only have rights. Taxpayers have rights because customers are always right. They have rights. A citizen has rights, duties, and obligations.
And responsibilities.
And we're not cultivating citizens. We're cultivating contented cows.
Yeah.
Give me what I want when I want it. If you don't give it to me, then who the hell are you? I'm going to get somebody else to give it to me. And only what I want, not what the person 3 doors down wants. I don't have kids anymore at school. I don't care if that school exists. Yeah, but if the school doesn't exist, the community is not as safe. The diversity isn't as good. Yeah. I don't care. I don't have kids. I'm a customer. I'm a taxpayer. You have people like Doug Ford who are going to run on this whole idea that you're getting ripped off. What's his solution? Stand in an apartment lobby and give $20 out to people. I mean, it's insane, these kinds of answers.
Yeah. And always we think that others always think, what's in it for me? And whenever we have a campaign or something, we start with this question. Everyone will ask, what's in it for me? So we turn everything as it has to be very beneficial, has direct, instantly affecting my life now, without this long-term vision that you are talking about with your with the school example that you mentioned. I might not be in need for school, but I'm in need for vibrant community, for healthy community, for diverse community. So yeah.
So take some of the other things we talked about: loneliness, unsustainable consumption, and this, and start where we can make the change. You said before, top down. No, where we make changes culturally amongst ourselves, that we have a commonality, a humanity, a universal peace to all of us. That there's I work as a spiritual counselor with some people.
Yeah, this is something I wanted to talk about, the role of spirituality.
Right. So in that work, it's about identifying that spark that animates all of us, that is unknowable to us. It's not voodoo. It's not magic. It's that there's certain things about life that are mystery. When someone says to me, well, prove God. I go, okay, well, prove love. Do you have it in a box somewhere? Can you show me what love is?
But there is something here. There is a difference between spirituality and religion. And whenever I'm talking to the people who use the word spirituality, I feel that they made it something abstract. You know, it's away from the religious rules and rituals and things
Yes.
like that. And not everyone can understand abstract.
So here's my answer to that, is that it actually is not an abstract thing. It's a relationship thing.
Mm,
Spirituality is the relationship you have to yourself,
mm,
to others. Is it a sacred relationship? Are you an it? Is this,
mm,
as Martin Buber would say, I and it, or
mm,
I and thou? And
mm,
then the last piece is my relationship to the planet and to the unknowable universe. I
mm.
mean, people have to have some awe and wonder in their lives. 500 billion galaxies.
Wow.
Can you put your head around that?
Yes.
I can't.
Yes.
I can't.
You know,
So
it's.
I'm just a speck. So what I just did a spirituality class with some kids,
Mhm.
and it was wonderful. I asked them what they thought God was. They had great answers. And then at one point, one of them said something which is actually what I think we were talking about, which is, look, we're all just little cells in
Yes.
the body of something that is beyond our comprehension.
Yes.
Your only work is to decide if you're going to be a healthy cell or a cancerous cell.
Oh, I love it.
That's your work as a person.
Yeah.
If you're wondering why you're here, it's what's your contribution to the body itself.
Yeah.
Now, that's spiritual relationship to yourself, to the other, to the planet, to the universe. That's spirituality. What religion is people's fitness programs to try to get there. They're saying, I need to repeat these things. I need to find ways to be coming together with other people and do things together. I need to have an agreed upon social contract that this is what we will do and this is what we won't do. And for some people now, in a world of individualism, it's like, don't tell me what to do. Buzz off. And for other people, it's a great comfort. It doesn't matter if you are animating your spiritual life on a regular basis, whether you're religious or not. Some people believe that an NFL football game is a religious experience. They truly do. I'm not demeaning it. Go to a wonderful musician playing music, and that's a spiritual experience.
Yes.
The question is, if you only do that 3 times a year, you can't build your spiritual muscles by never working out. So for some people, religion is a way of working out, a fitness plan. But anyone can create their own fitness plan. Do you meditate every day? You know, and they don't even call it meditating anymore. It's now called mindfulness.
Yes.
It's actually meditation. It's not a dirty word. But we're so intent on, we're so fearful of what religion can do to separate us that, you know, you and I can sit here coming from the same religious root and still insist that no, it's you know, it's my way. It's my way. It doesn't get you anywhere. You have to have a love for people's ability to, whatever you were born into is mostly what you do.
Yeah.
Just relax into it and accept that other people are doing it their way. I read a Christian mystic called Richard Rohr, R-O-H-R. I love what he writes, and he writes it through the lens of Jesus. Well, I'm Jewish.
Yeah.
I wasn't brought up with the lens of Jesus, but I've come to appreciate what Christ consciousness is, what Jesus means to people. I'm from an Arab country. I'm from Morocco, but I'm a Jew. Well, I see Muslims, my Muslim sisters and brothers as cousins. They're my cousins, right?
Yeah.
So we can decide to use this to separate us, or we can come together around these things. And that, one of the things I tell people in business consulting and political consulting is, in my business, you call it holy listening.
Holy listening.
Yes, but in real terms, what it means is I listen with my heart to your heart.
Yeah.
Not to your head, not to your cleverness, not to your pitch, my heart to your heart.
Yeah.
Why are you doing what you do? What is it you want to do for the world by doing what you do?
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting, because I always say that when we talk about diversity, do we have the right language in place? Because most of the time we focus on the differences and how we should respect each other's differences. But to me, we need to focus on the similarities. And from my observation, we share a lot, even with different religions, different backgrounds, ethnicities, how we are raised, or just to name it. We still share a lot. And if we shift our focus from the differences and respecting differences to finding what's common between you and me, I think we will come closer, and we will apply this diversity thing in a better way. And maybe this is what you are trying to do, being a spirituality coach, is finding this common ground and the common things that we share.
Yeah, I mean, really what I hope to do with people is help them to open their hearts to themselves first.
Yeah.
Because we're not very nice to ourselves most of the time.
Yeah.
And then open your heart to those around you, which is really hard to do. And then open your heart to people. You know, you can, if you listen to the news, it's information chaos. It is not knowledge, it is bits of information with no answer as to why.
Yes.
And after that, see, we used to have wisdom as a cultivated piece for an elder to have. And we went to our elders and respected them and asked them. We don't respect our elders anymore. Everyone's a peer. Then we went to knowledge, the rational age, the Enlightenment, all those pieces are about knowledge. And then we reduced ourselves from knowledge to information, which is just unrelated bits of stuff that you get on your Twitter feed all day, or your feedback on Facebook or whatever, or the news is just flying by you constantly. And now this happened. Well, that was enough of that crazy. This happened. Fukushima happened. Oh, forget Fukushima. Let's do the next thing. So we end up with no ability to absorb these enormous pieces and losing our connection to each other. But you know, in the morning, if you look on a residential street and you see families, parents walking their kids to a school a few blocks away, and then giving them a little hug, even though the kid, is, if they get old enough, doesn't want one anymore, and say, love you, see you later, and they goodbye, and they go in, and that's what we're actually doing. 98% of the time in this world, we're good people trying to do good things. But what we have is an overrepresentation of those things that are shocking and upsetting and awful. And so if you read the newspaper of any city that you were thinking of going to, you won't go.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I had a conversation with someone, and this is a repeated theme. Look at the world and the chaos that we live in. Wars everywhere, and famines and disasters and things like that. And I look at the history and I see these things are repeated. There is no year that we didn't have a war somewhere.
Right.
Or we didn't have a disaster somewhere. But with the information chaos that you are referring to, we only focus on the bad things, and the bad things only.
But that's because a human being living in a cave, coming out with predators all around, really has to focus on where's the bad thing. So it's a human nature thing to go, wait a minute, it's human nature to be pessimistic and negative, as much as it is a cultivation to be positive and affirming. You can afford to be, if you look at the demographics and environmental movements right now, it is people who have money, people who are usually of the privileged class. In North America, it would be many people would be Caucasian, because in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, at the pyramid, they're at the top. So now you can afford to think about the greater good. Now you can afford to think of. But if you also look at people who are so-called at the lower end of need, they actually come together in beautiful ways all around the world. We don't, what's interesting about a story that says Hanan and her family went down the street, got an ice cream on a hot summer's day, came back, the kids actually went to bed nicely for once, and everybody, they went to sleep.
No
Where's the news
story.
story?
Yeah.
Right. Now, if Hanan and her family walked to the variety store and 3 minutes after they left, it blew up,
Yeah.
and she was an eyewitness, we have Hanan in the story. But if
Yeah.
Hanan's living a life that's good for her, who
Yeah.
cares? Because we need to know, why do people slow down for a car accident? Because it's a survival thing. What happened there? Am I going to end up like that? What do I do to make sure I don't end up like that guy? I better remember to not tailgate people. Right? So all these things are just human. We must forgive ourselves the animal part of our lives and raise it up, as opposed to demean ourselves for not being all light and goodness. Right? I'm a great dad at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and by 10:30, I'm just like a D minus. You know, I just, would you just be quiet? I'm trying, you know, like grouchy and tired. So we're just human, but we need to find common purpose. You know, co-ops, out west, co-ops were the way people ran businesses, right? Why do we have 14 lawnmowers on my street? 28 lawnmowers on my street. Why can't we just have somebody buys, 2 people on the street buy lawnmowers, we all pay for it, means we pay almost nothing for it, 20 bucks for a lawnmower, and you sign up on an online sheet that says, I need the lawnmower 8 till 9 on a Saturday. I need the lawnmower 8 to 9 on a Sunday. This is how kibbutzim are run in Israel. You just, you sign out a car, you use it for a few hours, you give it back. You know, we need to find ways to stop throwing things out and stop throwing each other out. And just together.
But I can see there are certain organizations and businesses that started this sharing entrepreneurship that you suggested, but it doesn't resonate with everyone. For example, for me, you know, I like to have my tools, for example, so I can use it whenever I want. I'm responsible to keep it neat and maintain it. I don't trust others how they will treat these tools. You know, there are certain challenges to make this model appealing. You know,
right.
when Airbnb or Uber started, yes, it started that people sharing their homes and things like that, but it was for their personal benefit. You know, I'll have some extra cash.
Okay, but I'll give you an example. The tool library. Toronto has it, Hamilton has it, a few other cities in Ontario have it. A tool library. You go there for tool that you don't want to have to buy this thing. It costs way too much money.
Yeah.
You go and you use the tool library. Repair cafes.
Yeah.
Instead of throwing things out.
Yeah, and even musical instruments.
Right. So
having the library here, yeah, you can borrow the musical instruments.
Exactly. So there's all kinds of things that we don't need to be buying anymore. But we first have to find a way to change to a slow growth or no growth economy. If you measure the success of a business by quarterly reports, then your status quo, that's why they can't innovate. Because how are they going to take the chance of making a transition to something more interesting if they can't tell their shareholders that they actually have made more and more profit? Profit, profit, profit. Profit has to become the third line. People, planet, profit. Right? Not the first line. But that's not our system. Our system is to maximize your profits, which means minimize things like your labor costs. Labor is human beings.
Yeah.
Minimize what you give people to work for you. You know that when we have to legislate,
increase your sales.
Right, but we have to legislate things like people getting more than 2 weeks holiday a year. In this society, 50 weeks of work for 5 years, and then maybe we'll give you 3. We're like beasts of burden in this way. And now we don't even have that. Now nobody even wants to have a full-time employee. It costs them too much money. They'll just use you, plug and play people and automation. So we have to start anticipating where the puck is going and making different ways of relating to each other. And then I'm not going to have the answer. We need to sit together and start talking about well, how would this work? It's a revolution of work. That's what's happening now. And because it's so volatile and precarious, simple answers and identifying other people as your problem, fascism in other words, are the things that are cultivating and germinating in the world. Donald Trump is a proto-fascistic leader. He's an autocrat. He's a CEO bully. He's a narcissistic child. And these are the people who are Duterte in the Philippines, literally murdering people who are drug addicts, murdering them. And Trump gives him a pat on the back. Putin shooting journalists in hallways and stairwells who write against him, arresting the leader of the opposition. But people are scared for themselves, and they want a strict father to come in and save them from their fear. Fear and hope, the only two things that run campaigns. You can either go on hope or fear. Obama, hope, change. That was his slogan.
Yeah.
George Bush, a wolf in the forest. That was his commercial. Right? So that's what people have to realize. They're being played. They're not being told stories, they're being played.
Yeah, I see that this discussion leads to something that came to my mind, capitalism, because so many discussions, oppose capitalism, and the capitalists and people who defend it, they say, okay, so the laptop we are using now, it's a result of capitalism. The cell phone, the houses, everything. So I know that we will not be able to come with answers now, but at least we can ask more questions to see, is there a balance, something?
I got to stop you. You see that?
Yes.
This was not the result of capitalism.
Okay.
This was not cowboy entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley. This is Department of Defense spending in the United States.
Yeah.
Everything on this phone had a military application. The advances in car manufacturing, military applications.
Yeah.
In war, we make stuff faster and better because it's a matter of life and death. That's why the Israelis are such a startup thing.
I agree. Mass production, all the
enormous money
in chemistry, in machinery, in machine tools,
so
die
design. The myth is that this thing is the result of the free spirit of a free market. There's a wonderful book written quite a few years ago now called One Market Under God. And it's about the mysticism of the free market and the invisible hand, that if you just let us do our thing. Regulation is a sin. It's red tape. Regulation is supposed to protect us from people who are willing to overlook. So in Cairo, when there is a construction site, you can't be sure that it's up to any kind of a code, that the apartment building might collapse because it is not a regulated economy in the same way. Here, it's really rare for something like that to happen because you really have to violate a lot of code and have not had inspectors come by. That so-called red tape is to protect me. Because if you're going to cut corners and my health is at stake, if people dump mercury into the Grassy Narrows water and poison an entire 2 generations of indigenous people and then pretend they never did it, until one of the employees is so upset that he just goes, you know what, it's right there. It's right there in that field. We did it right there. So we need people, we need protection. We need to make sure that people don't just maximize their profits. And quite frankly, the rich have proven over and over again that they don't share any of it, they keep it. You give them more tax breaks, they keep it. Have you seen the cottages on Lake Joseph? They're unbelievable. Right? So these myths that, will die if we don't have this spirit of capitalism. I'm much more of a person who believes in a social democracy. I believe that there's a way to have a caring society. The happiest countries in the world are the ones with the highest taxes. That's a fact. But the way we do things now, all of our culture is infused with marketing mentality. Look at when you put together a business plan now. Customer segments, right? This is for women, 18 to... Look what the woman did yesterday trying to sell Doritos instead of Doritos. She just... So she blew it. Big deal. Do you know how many different kinds of Doritos there are in the market now? There must be 14 flavors, for God's sake. So market segmentation. Who is my market? How do I get to them? Who will they like if I show them this kind of a personality? Let's be Kudo and have a crazy kind of vibe. It's for kids to buy the phone, you know?
Yeah, but I think this market segmentation plays to the notion that people want to belong to something.
Yes,
So
you know,
I'm a woman. I'm a career woman. I'm a career mom. So using these labels that makes me belong to some group. I belong. I share certain characteristics. I enjoy certain products or specific lifestyle. So can you do this? Can you create a business away from market segmentation or customer types or categories? Can we do something like this?
Well, look, you're trying to change the approach to the system, not the system. It's a question of, do we really want to spend the rest of our lives creating a fair amount of products that are not particularly necessary to a good life? Or do we want to create a community of people who, as a friend of mine said, quite in a loving way, you know, a good life for me means that we're all just walking each other home. That's what we're doing. And if I see my life that way, have I made enough time to love the people who are loving me? Have I made enough time to try to be better as a person, even though most of the time it's just like, you're not cutting it. Have I made enough time to say, are you okay? Do you need anything? Or shoveling my neighbor's walk for, you know, the grand total of 4 minutes it takes. So to me, I'm not saying everybody has to be a saint and perfect, because that's what you get. You get mocking and humiliation when you talk like this. It's that I know that I'm talking about what people want in their lives. And the rest of this stuff is mostly a huge diversion. Like, this is not a rehearsal. This is our lives. This is it. And if we keep running around talking about these ridiculous notions of, you know, whether or not there's a 2% increase in sales of lime diet cola, it's like, really? Is that what we're doing here? He says, yeah, but I provide jobs. Yeah, but you know what? The people who are working for you, if you ask them, they don't want to be there. Nobody. I mean, 65% of people who are polled say that meetings are killing them. They can't stand being in meetings.
Yeah.
Because there's no trust, there's no openness, there's no sharing, there's just positioning. It's just making sure that you don't, first of all, you get credit for everything you did and you don't look like an idiot. That's it. Can I leave the meeting now? So we're not dealing with each other as people. We're dealing with each other as commodities. What use are you to me? Are you going to get me a job, Hanan? Because if not, why am I talking to you right now? Right? You're not, what? Where's my job? Like, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, no job. You know, I just wasted an hour.
Yeah.
All right, are we done?
Okay, I don't want to waste. I don't want to waste any more time. But you know, I am after wisdom, and that's why I talk to you and I talk to others. And to wrap this up, give me 3 practical steps that, as Hanan, as the owner of Corporita, can implement, so I can, you know, do something to the common good.
Okay. Listen with your heart.
Listen with my heart.
And hear with your heart.
And hear with my heart.
Yes. Like really hear what people are giving you. Listening is one thing, but just hear what this means. Like, what is the real yearning of the person you're talking to?
Yeah.
Don't treat things as this is, don't ever say to people, well, business is business.
Yeah.
Business is a reflection of your values and your principles in life. It's not, what they're really saying is, let's leave morality out of this. I think you should be a moral person in business. If you can't be, then what are you doing? If you're selling people stuff that you know actually gives them a much better chance of a heart attack, and I'm not talking about the poor schmuck who has to go work at this place. I'm talking about the person who designed the business model and is having very nice meetings in power suits about how that was a really good quarter. That's what I'm talking about. Like, it's okay to take a stand for saying this should matter. And the other thing is that say hello to people, get to know people, not because they're useful to you, but because you're useful to them.
Yeah.
Right? Say hi, walk down the street, make sure your neighbors know who you are, offer to help people.
Yeah.
Think about things as people, planet, profits. If you can do those kinds of things in that order.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you're asking to go broke.
Yeah.
It means get yourself in order, understand that this is our only home. Now, how do I make a profit? Right? Because a profit means that you can make a living and you can employ other people and that you're being useful. I'm not anti-business. I'm anti-immoral business.
Yeah.
And non-critical thinking consumption. So to me, that's it. That's the whole banana.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this interview, and I hope that one day I will be fully invested in listening with my heart.
Yes.
Acting morally and thinking people, planet, and then profit. Thank you so much. Thank you
welcome.
So much.
All right, you take care.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to Corporita Bonanza with Hanan Awaad. Catch our next episode on Thursday, and don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter at www.corporita.info to receive our articles to learn everything you need to pave your way to success.